Hello friends! Today I will take you through painting this country sunset. You'll start by drawing a horizon line about 2/3 of the way down the page. I was using a 2H pencil for that has hard graphite, which leaves just light marks. And then I'm going to come in with the 3/4 inch shader brush and start brushing clean water onto the paper. I'm using 100% cotton paper here, and I'm making sure to go evenly over the sky area with the brush so that I get this nice even sheen. You can see the light reflecting on it there. And once you've got that, you can start putting in color. I'm using a mixture of French ultramarine and then cerulean blue. And those two together are going to go in the upper left and top of the sky. I'm using a size 6 round brush for this. And I'm just lightly swiping the side, the belly of the brush over the paper. You can see how the color melts really beautifully into that water that's already on the surface of the paper. And then I'm rinsing off my brush and I'm going to pick up some of the cadmium red pale hue that's in my mixing well here. And then taking that over to the paper and concentrate this over on the lower right side of your sky. You'll get a little bit of a diagonal from the left to the right side that creates some dynamic visual interest and draws your eye through the painting. Use a little bit more intensity to the red hue down at the bottom right of the sky, and then in the center it fades into the blue a little bit more. Now I'm picking up a little bit more water here and I'm spritzing this just once very lightly with my spray bottle. And I've rinsed the brush off and now I'm picking up some titanium white. And I'm going to use this to smooth out the transition between the two colors. And also just add a little bit of impression of cloudiness in the sky, little white puff clouds in the sky. And then still preserving that intensity over to the bottom right. You can always go a little bit more intense than you think you might need to, because once you dry it, like it is here, it will tone down the color a little bit. Now I'm using some clean water on the ground. Still using a size 6 brush here. And then I'm going to start dropping in some pigment. This is sap green. I'm starting over on the left and carrying that over to the right, and then I'll scoot down my palette here so you can see I'm picking up some yellow ochre, and I'm going to place that over on the right. We're going to do a few layers on the ground, so this is really just wet on wet technique to start first, and I want to have a gradient going on from the green to the yellow. And then I'm dropping in a little bit of a darker value of that sap green. And just scattering that across the ground, and you can see that since the paper is wet, that color starts blending together really beautifully. Once that dries, we'll come back in and start adding in some bushes. I'm picking up a bit of phthalo blue green shade here and mixing it with that sap green. This will give more of a bluish undertone to the green that I'm using. And I'm going to start a little bit above the horizon line and just scattering some little dashes and squiggles. And then I will go quite thin along the horizon line and then bring it back up over on the right side. I really love that kind of horizon line. You'll see me do that a lot in my paintings where there's a fairly dark, deep horizon that's contrasting with the sky and the ground. I'm doing the same thing over here on the right, just dabbing the brush along the surface of the paper. I want this to have a more mottled look to it, and I'll use a few different shades of green as we work our way through this painting. Just adding a little bit more height over on that left side there. And then I've rinsed the brush off and I'm picking up more of the green mixture and swiping along the bottom there. That left more of a linear look than I intended, so I picked up some clean water on my brush in order to smooth that out, blend it out a little bit more on the bottom. I'm just adding more variety in the greens on the ground here. This isn't uniform, this is meant to be a bit irregular and create the look of variety across the ground. And you don't have to focus on just green. I'm continuing to go back to the yellow ochre and drop that in as well, just to warm up the greens a bit. Make sure you're going along your edges and into your corners. And then I'm picking up a bit more of that phthalo blue and sap green mixture and going back in and deepening the look of the trees and the bushes in the background, deepening that up just a little bit. I'm also carrying it down below the horizon line into the ground. And you'll see that above the horizon line, it has more texture. And then as I work down below the horizon line, I start using a lighter hand and keeping the brush in contact with the paper just a little bit longer. And that smooths out the texture a little bit. So it makes the transition from the textured trees and bushes to the less textured and more implied ground. We want an intermediary step in there. I have a little bit of burnt umber on my palette here, which I'm wetting with the brush and then dropping that in on the bushes. Basically, I want to break up all of the green and introduce another shade into the mix. Keeping more of that textured look above the horizon by using shorter strokes on the paper and then elongating those as I start to work down below the horizon line. I'm working back and forth across the paper, kind of jumping around because I want this to have a bit of an uneven look to it. And then I'm picking up a bit more of that sap green and dropping that in as well. I've let the paper dry here and I'm going to add a little bit more texture to the tops of the bushes. Right now they're very rounded off and I want to have some little segments that come out from that perfectly rounded look and make it a little more irregular. I'm also continuing to drop some of that down into the main part of the ground. And anytime you get harsher dots or lines like I had there, you can always pick up more clean water on your brush and use that to smooth them out a little bit. Now I'm picking up a bit more of the yellow ochre. What I want to do is concentrate this more on the right side of the ground to warm that up a little bit. I want to imply that the warmth of the sunset is coloring that part of the ground. You won't get a true reflection the way that you would if we were painting water, but you will get a nice warm golden hour effect that way. Now this part of the horizon line, I wanted to thicken up just a little bit, so I'm coming back in there with some of that phthalo blue. And then once that dries, we're ready to peel the washi tape off those edges and reveal that nice white border. We do have a little bit of a snafu here, which I will show you how to fix. See how there's some bleeding there? The tape wasn't adhered all the way down onto the paper, so you get a little bit of a bleed when the wet paint presses up against that loose tape. So I'm taking a bit of the titanium white and I'm using a tiny brush here. This is a size 2. And I'm just working it along the edge to cover that up. This is slightly transparent, so I'm going to go over this a couple of times. If you use this trick, you can let the border dry in between your layers and just add as many layers as you need to cover that up. Problem solved. And again, that can be avoided by double checking the edges of your tape when you first lay them down and making sure that they're really pressed into the paper. This is cold pressed paper, so it has some texture to it, so I will also be reminding myself to do that. Once you have completed that, then your painting is finished. Thank you, as always, for joining me for this one. My name is Sarah, and I hope to see you again very soon.